What if I told you that pristine, perfectly organized tackle box you're so proud of is actually a fish repellent? Sounds crazy, right? We spend hours arranging our lures by color, size, and type. We buy special containers with dozens of little dividers. But today, we're talking about how the way you organize your gear could be the single reason you miss that one explosive 5-minute feeding frenzy that makes or breaks your day. By the end of this video, you'll look at your tackle box in a completely new light, and I promise you'll understand why a little bit of smart chaos is better than dumb order. It's not about the lures you have, it's about a hidden flaw in how you get to them. So think about it for a second. Have you ever been too organized? Let me know in the comments if that even sounds possible. Look, we've all been taught the same thing since we were kids. A good angler is an organized angler. Your grandpa probably told you, a place for everything and everything in its place. We see the pros on TV with their boats looking like sterile operating rooms, every lure perfectly aligned. This idea is drilled into us. The problem is, that approach is designed for storage in the garage, not for combat on the water. We get fixated on making our gear look good, on having these massive boxes filled with every lure ever made. We believe that having more options on the boat is always better, but this habit, this belief, completely ignores the most critical factor in fishing: the bite window. That brief, frantic period when fish are actively feeding and vulnerable. In those moments, speed and efficiency are all that matter. And the very systems we build to be organized often become our own worst enemy, slowing us down when it counts the most. First, let's shatter the myth of the perfect tackle box. You know the one I'm talking about. It's in every fishing magazine and catalog. A massive plastic case, opened up to reveal hundreds of gleaming lures, all sorted by a rainbow color pattern. It looks amazing. It makes you feel like a pro. But that's a photograph. That's not reality. The reality is you're on a boat, it might be windy, the waves are slapping the hull, and you've just seen a school of bass blow up on a shad 5 feet from the bank. The last thing you need is a 3-tiered monstrosity that you have to lay down, unlatch in 3 places, and carefully open so nothing spills. That beautiful, magazine-worthy setup is slow, it's cumbersome, and it's loud. On the water, function beats fashion every single time. The goal isn't to have a pretty box, it's to have a weapon. And a weapon needs to be ready to fire at a moment's notice, not admired for how well it's polished. Now, let's talk about the single most important concept here: the golden minute. This is what it's all about. Think about the best fishing days you've ever had. I bet they weren't a slow, steady bite all day long. They were likely defined by short bursts of intense action. A school of stripers pushes bait to the surface. A pack of walleye moves onto a point to feed at dusk. That action might only last for 5 minutes. Sometimes it's just 60 seconds. During that golden minute, every cast counts. Every second you spend digging through a tackle box, untangling a treble hook, or trying to decide between 2 shades of green pumpkin is a wasted opportunity. It's a cast you didn't make into a frenzy. So, when you organize your gear, you have to ask yourself one question. Does this setup allow me to get a lure in the water within 10 seconds of seeing a fish? If the answer is no, your system is broken, no matter how neat it looks. This brings us to a huge problem many anglers face: analysis paralysis. This is what happens to your brain on the water when you're presented with too many choices. Imagine you open a utility box and there are 150 crankbaits inside. All different colors, sizes, and diving depths. You see a fish bust the surface. Your brain should immediately go to cast there now. Instead, it goes into overdrive. Should I use the sexy shad or the chartreuse? Does this one dive to 8 feet or 10 feet? Maybe the silent one is better than the one with rattles. By the time you've debated with yourself and finally picked a lure, the fish are gone. Having fewer well-chosen options at your fingertips is far more effective than having every lure you own. An overstuffed tackle box doesn't make you a better angler. It just makes you a slower one. Let's discuss something that often gets overlooked: the sound of failure. I'm talking about noise. We spend a fortune on quiet trolling motors and learn how to make stealthy casts. And then we proceed to make a racket that would wake the dead while digging in our tackle box. The loud clack of a plastic latch opening. The thunderous rattle of 100 tungsten weights sliding around in a hard plastic container. The clatter of pliers being dropped on the deck. In calm, shallow water, or when targeting highly pressured fish, these sounds travel. A bass sitting under a dock can absolutely hear you fumbling with your gear above. I've personally seen fish spook and swim away just from the sound of a tackle tray being opened. Your organization system should prioritize silence. Using foam-lined boxes, keeping terminal tackle in soft bags, and minimizing how many times you have to open and close containers can make a massive difference. So, what's the solution? It's a concept I call the Speed-Ready Go Box. This is the absolute core of the system. Your main giant tackle box isn't your primary tool on the water. Think of it as your library or your home base. It stays in a storage compartment on the boat or in the truck. The Go Box is a small, easy-to-open single-latch utility box. Inside, you have maybe 10 to 15 baits max. These are the lures you've pre-selected for the day, based on the conditions, the season, and the forage. It might have a couple of topwaters, a few jigs, a spinnerbait, and the plastics to go with them. This box sits right at your feet on the deck. When the bite happens, you don't have to think. You open one latch, grab what you need, and cast. It's about building a small curated arsenal for the battle ahead, not bringing the entire armory. Before you can build your Go Box, you have to perform surgery on your main system. The first step is to ruthlessly declutter. I want you to take every single lure, every hook, every weight out of your boat. Lay it all out on the garage floor. Now be honest with yourself. Pick up each lure and ask, have I used this in the last 2 years? If the answer is no, it doesn't belong in your boat. We all have those sentimental lures or baits we bought on a whim that have never seen the water. They are clutter. They are dead weight. They are obstacles that stand between you and the lure you actually need. Your boat is not a museum or a storage unit. It's a fishing machine. Get that old rusted junk out of there. This process alone will make you feel lighter and more focused. Okay, let's talk about a smarter way to organize. By function, not by looks. The traditional method is to have a crankbait box, a jig box, a topwater box, and so on. This looks tidy, but it's not efficient. Think about how you actually fish. You don't just decide to throw jigs all day. You decide to fish a specific type of structure, like a deep rocky point. A better way to organize is to create boxes based on application or technique. For example, you could have a deep water ledge box. Inside, you'd have your deep diving crankbaits, your football jigs, and your heavy drop shot rigs. Another box could be for shallow wood cover, containing square bills, flipping jigs, and creature baits. This way, when you pull up to a spot, you grab one box that has everything you need for that situation, instead of 3 or 4 different ones. This is a big one, a mistake I see all the time. Let's call it the scent contamination catastrophe. This happens primarily with soft plastics. You have a bunch of leftover worms and craws, so you just dump them all into one big compartment in a utility box to save space. This is a cardinal sin of tackle organization. Here's why. Different plastics are made with different formulas. Some are loaded with salt, others are soaked in oil-based scents. When you mix them, 2 terrible things happen. First, the scents bleed into each other, creating a weird, unnatural chemical cocktail that can absolutely repel fish. Second, the plastics themselves can have a chemical reaction. They can melt together into a sticky, useless blob of goo. You've not only ruined your baits, but you've also created a mess that's a pain to clean up. It's a costly mistake, born from a desire to be organized. The solution to scent contamination is simple but crucial. Keep your soft plastics in their original factory-sealed bags for as long as possible. The manufacturers designed those bags specifically to preserve the integrity, scent, and action of the baits. Don't throw them out. Now, I know what you're thinking. Having dozens of little plastic bags floating around is messy. So the next step is to get a soft-sided tackle binder or a simple canvas bag. Organize the bags of plastics within that larger container. You can group them by type, all your Senkos in one area, all your creature baits in another. It's one extra step, but it ensures that every time you rig up a new plastic, it's fresh, has the correct scent, and isn't tainted by the bait you were using an hour ago. This discipline pays off in more bites, guaranteed. Let's talk about the treble hook nightmare. This is the bane of every angler who loves to throw crankbaits, jerkbaits, or topwaters. You start the day with them all sitting perfectly in their little individual compartments. They look like soldiers lined up for inspection. But after a few hours of fishing, after you've used a couple and thrown them back in the box, it turns into an absolute rat's nest. The treble hooks from one lure grab onto another, creating a tangled web of metal and plastic. When you need to make a quick change during a hot bite, you waste precious time trying to surgically separate them, often hooking yourself in the process. It's frustrating, it's dangerous, and it's a direct consequence of a traditional but flawed organizational method. It's a problem that costs anglers fish every single day. Fortunately, there's a simple fix for the treble hook mess: hook bonnets and lure wraps. I know they might seem like a gimmick you see in catalogs, but they are legitimate time savers. Small plastic caps, or bonnets, that snap over each point of a treble hook completely neutralize its ability to snag. You can then put multiple lures in the same larger compartment without fear of them tangling. For bigger baits like glide baits or A-rigs, a lure wrap is a game changer. It's a simple piece of fabric, usually with a Velcro closure, that wraps around the entire lure and its hooks. This allows you to keep a big bait tied onto a dedicated rod, ready to go, without it snagging on your carpet, your boat cover, or your passenger. These small investments in gear will pay you back tenfold in saved time and frustration on the water. Your system needs to be organized for the "oh crap" moment. Here's the scenario. You're catching fish after fish on a specific green and chartreuse square bill. It's the only thing they'll eat. Then, you cast a little too close to a laydown and snap, you break it off. The school is still active. The clock is ticking. The question is, can you get an identical replacement lure tied on and back in the water in under 60 seconds? Or do you have to start a full-on excavation, digging through 3 different boxes because you're not sure where you put the duplicates? This is where simple labeling and logical grouping comes in. If you have backup baits, they should be stored right next to or directly behind the primary one. Your system shouldn't just be for starting the day, it should be designed for rapid recovery from failure. Let's move on to terminal tackle triage. This is a huge area for improvement. Most of us use those little plastic utility boxes with 20 or 30 tiny adjustable compartments for our hooks, weights, and swivels. They seem like a great idea, but in practice, they are terrible. They're hard to open, especially with cold or wet hands. When you do get them open, it's easy to spill the entire contents. And finding one specific size 3 offset worm hook among dozens of others takes too much time. The better way is to create small, dedicated kits. Get a few small pocket-sized boxes or even heavy-duty Ziploc bags. Make one for your Texas rigs, just the hooks and bullet weights you need. Make another for drop shotting with your hooks and weights. You grab the one kit you need for the technique you're using, and that's it. I'm sure we all have a story that illustrates this perfectly. I remember one time, I was trying to retie a Carolina rig on a windy day. I had my big multi-compartment terminal box open on the seat. A big gust of wind came up, caught the lid, and flipped the entire thing over. Hundreds of hooks, weights, beads, and swivels went all over the deck of my boat. It was a disaster. I probably spent 15 minutes trying to pick everything up, and by then, the bite on that spot was completely dead. It was a lesson learned the hard way. If I had just been using a small self-contained kit with only the components I needed for that rig, the worst that could have happened is I'd have spilled maybe 5 or 6 items. It's about containing the chaos and minimizing the potential for catastrophic failure. Here's a concept that expands beyond just the box itself. Your rod locker is a critical part of your tackle system. The most efficient anglers I know have multiple rods on the deck, each pre-rigged with a different presentation. Before they even launch the boat, they've decided on their top 3 to 5 patterns for the day. One rod might have a topwater, one a jig, one a crankbait. This is the ultimate expression of speed. When they want to switch from a jig to a crankbait, they don't open a box. They simply put one rod down and pick another one up. The whole process takes 3 seconds. Your tackle box, in this system, becomes a reloading station. It's there for when you need to retie or replace a bait, not for making your initial strategic decisions on the water. Think of it as your ammo can, not your primary rifle. Now, let's debunk that old grandpa myth we talked about earlier. A place for everything, and everything in its place. The saying itself isn't wrong, but our interpretation of it often is. We take it to mean that everything should be put away in its most secure, tidy location. But the place for an item should be determined by its frequency of use and the need for quick access. Your most used pair of pliers shouldn't be tucked away in a side compartment under your rain gear. They should be in a sheath on your belt or in a tool holder right next to your seat. Your bottle of scent shouldn't be at the bottom of a dry storage box. It should be in a cup holder. It's about creating a cockpit, like a fighter pilot. Everything you need to access in a hurry should be within arm's reach, no thought required. Another key is that your organization must be dynamic. It has to change based on the weather and conditions. Your go box shouldn't be a static thing you set up once at the beginning of the season. It needs to be adjusted before every single trip. For example, you look at the forecast and see it's going to be cloudy, overcast, with a 10-mile-per-hour wind. That tells you that reaction baits like spinnerbaits and chatterbaits are likely going to be key players. So, you load your go box with those. The next day, it might be dead calm, bluebird skies. Those baits go back in the main library, and your go box gets loaded with finesse baits, like drop shots and Ned rigs. This pre-trip planning is what separates the consistently successful anglers from the ones who just get lucky once in a while. Your preparation on land dictates your efficiency on the water. I want you to visualize this scenario with me. You're cruising down a bank, watching your electronics. Suddenly, you mark a big school of fish. They're suspended over a brush pile in 20 feet of water. Your heart starts pounding. You know exactly what you need to throw: a 3/4-ounce football jig or a deep-diving crankbait. Now, start the clock. How many latches do you have to open to get that lure? How many trays do you have to lift out of the way? Do you have to walk to the back of the boat to open a different storage compartment? The correct answer to this question should be 1. You should be able to open one lid on one box that's right at your feet and have that bait in your hand. If your process involves more than one step, it's too slow. You're leaking precious seconds from that golden minute. Finally, let's not forget the psychological benefit of a streamlined system. Fishing can be a mentally demanding sport. When the bite is on, things happen fast. You need to be focused. A cluttered, inefficient tackle system creates stress. It introduces negative thoughts. Where is that lure? Why can't I untangle this? I'm missing the bite. When your system is simple, fast, and intuitive, it frees up your mental energy. You're no longer thinking about your gear. You're thinking about the fish. You're watching your line, feeling for the subtle bite, and anticipating the hook set. It allows you to get in the zone and operate on instinct. That clear-headed confidence is an intangible asset, but it's just as important as having a sharp hook. Your organization should build confidence, not create anxiety. So, let's bring it all together. The most critical part of this entire philosophy is the pre-trip ritual. This is the 5 or 10 minutes you spend in your garage or at the boat ramp before you ever get on the water. This is where the real organization happens. You look at the conditions for the day, you think about the lake you're fishing, and you deliberately choose a small elite squad of lures from your main storage boxes, your library. You assemble your go box. You rig your 3 or 4 primary rods. You are essentially creating a custom-built game plan for the day. This proactive approach completely changes the game. You're no longer reacting to conditions on the fly. You're anticipating them. Those few minutes of prep will save you countless moments of frustration and will directly result in more fish in the boat. So, let's pull it all together. The big secret isn't about having a neat tackle box. It's about having an efficient one. We've talked about how analysis paralysis, noise, and wasted seconds are the real enemies on the water. We've established that the traditional way of organizing, while it looks good, is often slow and impractical. The game changer, the real holy cow moment here, is realizing your main tackle collection is just a library. You don't take the entire library fishing with you. You check out a few good books for the day. That's your go box. This isn't about being lazy or messy. It's about thinking like a predator. It's about moving with speed and purpose when that brief opportunity strikes. This mindset shift will fundamentally change your approach, from someone who manages gear to someone who hunts fish. Thanks for sticking with me. If this gave you some ideas on how to rethink your own setup, do me a huge favor and hit that like button and subscribe for more no-nonsense fishing advice. It really helps the channel out. Now I have to ask, what's the one lure that's always in your go box, no matter the season or the weather? Drop it in the comments below. I'm really curious to see what everyone's #1 confidence bait is.